My Hero Academia Chapter 392, titled Villain Name, kicks off with a horrifying scene. Atop the innumerable horde of Twice clones was a battle-damaged Sue, bound by several reinforced tape measures as a partially exposed Toga loomed from behind with a knife. Here, she wondered aloud what Uraraka could ever possibly understand about her. Uraraka saw this terrible scene unfold as she continued to be swarmed by the countless villainous clones. As some even began to climb along her gauntlet's wire, she actually made use of twin jet propulsors within her boots for the sake of better controlling her zero-gravity movement, which, as far as we know, is a new addition to her gear, and a pretty cool one at that. Despite the many clones closing in on her, Uraraka was far more concerned with her friend's unfortunate predicament and called out to her. This was really bad. The wounds that Sue had sustained during their original confrontation against Toga on the island were making it difficult for her to manage any resistance here. Manically enraged, Toga lost her mind as she exclaimed that Uraraka had never had to deal with any inconvenience in her life whatsoever, that the rules of their society were made for people like her. As she raised her knife to end Sue, she added that Uraraka was born into such an easy life. Meanwhile, the two heroes could only brace themselves for the worst. Now, despite her previous declarations of love and affection, this is a clear indicator that, delusions aside, Toga has only ever been infatuated with these characters, since she clearly doesn't know anything about Uraraka besides what is presented on the surface. Of course, Uraraka's life can hardly be considered worse than Toga's or anything like that, but to say that she was born into an easy life and never even had a single inconvenience is objectively false. Let's not forget that Uraraka was born into poverty and initially decided to become a hero for the sake of making enough money to support her family. It's not the most fleshed out backstory in the world, but then again, this is My Hero Academia, they hardly ever are. I mean, we don't know Deku's dad at all, and no matter what Horikoshi decides to do there at this point, if anything, nothing in canon has ever been set up to tease or prepare for that, and he is the main character. We don't know a single thing about All Might outside of him being a wielder of One for All, and the complete histories of anyone that isn't Bakugo or doesn't have Todoroki as a last name is virtually non-existent. Uraraka's poverty is mostly played off as a joke, and for many fans outside of Japan, her parents simply having a failing construction business can hardly be considered poor at all. But she has literally conditioned herself to eat sleep for dinner. So point is, life hasn't been that sweet. And that's all before we consider the fact that during the exact same battle that saw the death of Twice, Uraraka's teacher, Midnight, was killed too. Flashing back, we'd see a continuation of a previous Toga one where she brought her parents a dead sparrow whose blood she had drank. From the looks of things, Toga's father had shoved the preschooler, knocking her and the dead bird back a considerable distance. It's one thing to be creeped out, but this is crazy abuse against a child who clearly doesn't know any better and didn't intend any harm. Both completely horrified and against their young child, these sorry excuses for parents came to the immediate assumption that Toga had killed the creature for the sake of drinking its blood and sadistically smiled about it. Not sure what kind of diabolical Looney Tunes scheme they think this 3-foot-tall little girl came up with to catch a flying creature, but they seem pretty sure about it. And technically, I guess they're not entirely wrong. The bird was hurt and suffering, and Toga's drinking of its blood did manage to put it out of its misery. Bruised and crying profusely, Toga swore that she'd simply found it on the ground in the backyard. Toga's parents immediately got in contact with a professional that planned on visiting their home. Apparently, this was an issue that came about plenty of times in their current society. Some sort of deviance was common in children with strong quirks, but it was something she was sure could be fixed as if it never existed. From there, Toga was taken to quirk reform, where a woman intended to straighten her out and make her normal. Now, the visuals of this woman's face are identical to the visuals we've seen for Toga in the past, so it seems like their correctional brainwashing was able to work for a time, but of course, cracked at some point, and Toga's true nature shone through. For her entire life, Toga had been berated by others for looking, thinking, and acting in ways that defied the status quo. The entire time, she observed the relationships and connections of others, all of which she completely lacked. Nothing they ever said was able to get through to her, and despite their efforts, she never abided by their definition of normal. Toga saw relationships and connections everywhere. Romantic ads on billboards, admiration of heroes, mature relationships, platonic relationships, animal companionship, environmental appreciation, and long-time connections, none of which she was able to similarly experience or express. So it makes sense why she cherishes the League of Villains as much as she does. Later on, Toga's parents shunned her for drinking her friend's blood. But according to Toga, that wasn't true. They'd been hurt, so she kissed it better. And that didn't really help her case, as they wondered if she wanted to be normal at all. But their perception of normal just didn't make sense to her at all. She couldn't understand it no matter how much she tried. With blood all over her hands and mouth while tears flooded over her curved smile, Toga wondered if everyone was just suppressing their desire to become the ones they love. She wondered why nobody else kisses the way she does. Toga's father was at his limit. He knew this wasn't right and believed his daughter was rotten to the core, that they had given birth to a child that wasn't even human. And listen, Toga's parents are definitely trash, but at the same time, I have no idea what I would do with a kid like this. Although, actually listening and attempting to comprehend her perspective and impulses would be a good start. This world seems to only have hero high schools, not middle schools. But seeing as Eri is a 7-year-old with the power to instantly wipe a person from existence and is being taken care of at UA, I'm sure there's a way to handle this with heroic supervision. And if all else fails, maybe try giving her blood to see if it calms the desire. If she is essentially a blood addict, and the issue is how she goes about obtaining and consuming it, change those variables into something more controlled and reasonable. Until things like that are attempted, it's hard for me to say that they really made a solid effort to help her. And because a person's quirk is usually a combination of their parents, I'm left to wonder about them even more, despite Horikoshi seeming to have no intention of revealing their identities. But in the present, as Toga moved to strike Tsu, she began to hear the voice of the late villain Curious, who'd whisper in her ear that she'd swept all her feelings under the rug. She'd speak of how Toga had put on a mask and suppressed herself, all in an effort to become someone she wasn't. Just when Toga swiped at Tsu, she was pulled with great force by Uraraka and her wire as the young hero spiraled in mid-air thanks to the aforementioned jet boots. While the two remained connected, Toga yelled out Uraraka's name in utter frustration. Tsu fell from the sky towards Jiro, who herself was being held by a surprised Kamui Woods. With his helmet off to reveal his rubbish head of hair and the real Tsu now in his clutches, he would cry out to the headphone hero that the person she was trying to save wasn't Tsu at all. Jiro was not expecting this and was completely caught off guard, as before long, a totally disturbing version of Tsu came close to attacking her. Thankfully, the versatility of Kamui Woods' quirk allowed him to strike at the doppelganger despite still holding on to Jiro and the real Tsu. Now a heap of villainous clones, the villainous fiends continue to recite their collective belief that all heroes must die. Because the clones were drinking the blood found on the battlefield, they were also able to take on the appearances of characters like Tsu and Jiro. And I gotta say, the thought of these guys finding and drinking blood on the ground through their masks during such a rush is kind of funny to think about. Jiro was shocked that even she was included in the lineup, and this was on account of her losing one of her earlobes, which is interesting since the clones aren't missing one. Kamui Woods would tell them that against an army like this, they needed to work together and attack together. But sadly, they had all been scattered, and there was a high likelihood that other heroes had been tricked by her disguised clones. Then, for probably the first time on the channel, I have no idea what happened, guys. There seems to be a sudden explosion or upheaval of sorts, but it is an extremely messy panel that is pretty obnoxiously covered up. It comes out of nowhere and doesn't seem to have any surrounding context, so boom, I guess. There didn't seem to be anything they could do to stop the horde of clones. It now made total sense why Hawks immediately commanded them all to kill these things. And considering how troublesome this knockoff version has been, they should all be happy Hawks killed the real Twice when he did. Which is so interesting to me because it completely goes against this whole talk to and save your villains thing that these young heroes seem to mostly be going for. The Hero Commission and its agents like Lady Nagan have been thoroughly vilified and presented as the wrong way to go about things, yet if we denied their way entirely, the original Twice would have been able to win the villains every battle or war imaginable in a matter of seconds. The only way to reasonably stop him without killing him would be with the quirk-destroying drug. Something that was produced thanks to evil, torturous experimentation, so pick your poison. All Might got all the praise for keeping their society safe, but even that wasn't enough. Deku is overcoming the issue of society relying on just one guy to hold it down by relying on his friends. But when it comes to doing the hard but necessary dirty work, I have yet to see a convincing alternative. Now suddenly swarmed by these clones, and still alive somehow, Tsu began to call out to Toga to continue talking even more. She'd tell her that at first, she believed that being a hero meant following the rules, and anything less than that seemed like a villainous act. But right now, Uraraka's objective wasn't to follow the rules. More than anything else, she wanted to confront Toga. The path she had chosen was a far harder one than just arresting or killing the villain. Now, really and truly, with this many lives hanging in the balance, it does feel a bit odd to be attempting a verbal breakthrough here. But then again, what else can they do? None of the remaining heroes are built for this fight, and outside of sudden quirk evolutions, the power system of the world is extremely hard fixed when it comes to capabilities and potential. Toga is a mentally unstable character with a time limit. Simply talking to her has done more damage than anything else so far. And she's practically shadowboxing a woman she killed. Whether or not it's an enjoyable experience as a reader or if the results will be satisfying is another story. At least not with how My Hero Academia's narrative has been for nearly 400 chapters now. Sue knew that saying Uraraka was late to doing this was an understatement, but she'd begged the villain to please listen to what she has to say. Sue must not know that these things don't share a single mind, because from where she is, she's literally just preaching to the choir. Because up in the air, Toga was plunging a knife deep in Uraraka's stomach as the blood sprayed from her mouth and wound. According to Toga, they were just too different. She had never felt the blessings and happiness Uraraka's talked about even a single time. She'd tell Uraraka not to project her own standards and decide that she should pity her. She also seems to randomly grope her for some reason. Hero Society undeniably failed characters like Toga and Twice. But at the end of the day, Toga is a bloodthirsty mass murderer whose victims mostly include innocent people. Twice was one of the most notorious criminals in the country that couldn't be caught by All Might or any other hero, and ended up joining a terrorist organization that sought to kill and abduct schoolchildren, overthrow the country, and force the world into a constant state of depression and anarchy. Not to mention that just before his dying breath, to stop a hero that only intended to arrest Toga and Mr. Compress, he mercilessly jammed a knife in the man's head and killed him. I am really curious what Horikoshi intends to do with Toga, all things considered. Talking to your enemies is just one of those classic shonen tropes that isn't leaving anytime soon. But with My Hero Academia's premise pretty much being the real world with superpowers, I can also understand why so many people are disillusioned by the excessiveness. Comparatively, the crimes and associated death tolls are much higher in a series like Naruto. But at the same time, they are all soldiers, and when that sort of behavior is in service to one's village, it is seen as a good thing. But I digress. Toga then remembered the past even more as a smoking Twice came to the realization that Toga hadn't yet decided on a villain name. My Hero Academia is on break next week. Horikoshi's author note this week was, quote, "Fluids keep coming from my ears, but now it finally stopped. My ears were at the brink of death. That was close." So hopefully he's able to rest some more because health concerns just keep piling on for him at this point. In the comments, let us know how you're feeling about this Toga fight right now and Toga in general. As always, I'm Celestial Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.